Good evening, everybody, and welcome to week 8 in CA 121, Culinary Skills and Techniques. It's wonderful to have everybody here. Crystal, thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking a look at the classroom policy. That's very, very important. We did put that up into the week 7 presentation last week. And the reason for that is that we need to start maintaining ourselves in a very professional fashion, because once you are in industry, you are going to be looked at for those details, and professionalism is something that will carry you very, very far. You have to remember that first impressions go a long way, especially in this industry. You know, you make up your mind about another person after about the first 15 seconds that you meet them. And, you know, if you present yourself in a professional fashion, then you're going to be that much further ahead of the curve. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session. Sure, you've noticed by now I do that at everyone, right? The same tagline. Yeah. Never gets old, though, does it?
No, I like it. It feels good. It feels well established and genuine.
It is, yeah. Hi, Deidre. How are you? Welcome to the class. Chef Suzanne and I want to remind you, you know, we have a couple of students that aren't, you know, struggling just a little bit in the class. Chef Suzanne and I want to remind you that this is your chance to build your future. And the more effort you put into today, the better the reward is going to be tomorrow. And that's for everybody. Whether you're getting an A or an F in the class, that principle goes straight across the board. And remember, you can do it. This is possible. This is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to have a very bright future and build a better tomorrow. So we are here to help you succeed. We are going to make a slight change with some of the stuff that we are working on. We are going to open up all of the prior 7 weeks, including week 8, all the way back to week 1. We're going to open up all of the assignments. That also includes knowledge checks and discussion forums. So if you have missed any of those projects to date, now is your opportunity to go back and complete them, and you'll be caught up in no time. So, you know, Chef Suzanne and I were speaking just a moment ago, and if you sit down one day, you know, just knock it all out. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
I think that is awesome. I'm really excited that they'll get a chance to do that. And I know me personally, sometimes I like to make multiple meals on a day or in a weekend and have them ready. And so this is an opportunity to be able to do a couple of assignments, get them out of the way, and have meals for a couple of days in the week, all in one day, get it just out of the way.
Smart thinking.
I love that. Meal prep is a great thing, and you knock out some homework assignments. I mean, that's awesome.
Boom. Boom. So if anyone has fallen behind in the class, and there's a few of you out there, this is your opportunity to become golden again. And you can go ahead and get this done at your own pace, and you sit down, like Chef Suzanne was saying, just sit down, make your kitchen a mess once, clean it once, and you know, boom, you're done. So take advantage of it. We really want to help you out. As well, anybody that gets all of their assignments in for this course will receive a 10% bump to their grade. How about that? That is a big deal. So once again, if you get 100% of your knowledge check, discussion forum, and assignments turned in, you get a 10% bump. So we are here to help you succeed. We want to see everybody get through this class. That is our goal. So Chef Suzanne and I are committed to do that. And we're going to do whatever it takes to help you. Week 7, everybody. How was it? Chef Suzanne, how was week 7?
It was good. I saw some really nice, a lot of collard greens. So I'm thinking maybe those were on sale this week. So we saw a lot of collard greens, spinach. I think I saw sweet potatoes for the first time. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody do sweet potatoes this week. They looked amazing. So I've just seen some really Brussels sprouts, lots of Brussels sprouts. So they just look very, very nice with the quick braise and the long braise. I think if there was any issues, it was probably not getting any GBD on their initial saute before they added their liquid. They probably could have cooked a little bit more to get a little bit more color, because you know the color adds so much flavor later on in the dish. and it's
Right.
such an important part. But I think in general, I think the assignments look really good.
Oh, that's exciting. That's
And I
great to
did,
hear.
and I saw some of my favorite comments and where I'm like, I love this. I wish I had been doing this for years. Or I'm going to make this again. My kids love this. So these dishes are really a big hit.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's encouraging. Crystal, how did you like week 7?
Okay, I think I misunderstood the assignment. I thought I had a choice, either or. I didn't think I had to do both kinds of braisel, or how do you say it?
Quick braised or short braised?
Yeah, I didn't think I had to do both, so I only did one. I have to
Uh-huh.
resubmit the assignment.
Well, we just gave you a little extra time to do it now, so tonight's your night. Yeah. What did you braise?
Finish?
Spinach, good for you. How'd it come out?
Okay, new for me, but it was okay. I liked it.
Uh-huh. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with that. I like to braise spinach and then puree it in a Vitamix, and then run it through a colander, and then bring it back up to a boil and hit it with a little bit of arrowroot to give it some body. And I think it makes such a great paint to decorate plates with that nice green chlorophyll that's popping up to the surface. That's one of the fun things I love to do. I also love to deep fry spinach. If you ever get a chance, that's something we've done quite a bit. It's a wonderful garnish for dishes. It becomes nice and green and translucent. So it's awfully nice. Good job. I was really impressed too. We did have a pretty good amount of participation in the discussion forum this week. That's also called the kitchen table. And it's always neat, and I know Chef Suzanne really enjoys this, when you get a chance to take a look about what the student likes to cook. And this week, everyone was sharing about poaching and braising recipes, and it's really neat to see what people are interested in. One of the most fascinating things about culinary arts to me is there is no right and no wrong about what you like. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
There I am. I couldn't find the button. They moved. Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. If nothing else, you learn that definitely having children. But everybody likes something different.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And once you get out there in the industry, you're probably going to end up getting into wines and other things as well. And those become very personal tastes about what you think is fantastic. And that's one of the most impressive things, because it's so individualized, your personal taste. And I love to see what people really like. Good job on the conversion knowledge check this week. I think everyone did fantastic with that. This week we'll have another one coming up just for you. It's very, very special. Chef Suzanne, do you have anything else to add in to week 7?
I don't think so. Again, I like this week and well, this past week and this week now that we're heading into, because I feel like this is where so much growth takes place in what everybody experiences. And it's so different from a lot of things that we've all grown up with, whether it was things that we've cooked or whether it was things that we ate. Braising isn't something that most people grew up with, I don't think, typically, or maybe just 1 or 2 dishes. But I feel like this is where people really start to go, aha. I feel like there's a lot of aha moments during braising.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. That's a good point. Just writing out the PowerPoint for this evening, I had a lot of aha moments doing the whole thing. And I'm going to admit something, and I probably shouldn't, but we all grew up with pot roast, and I never put that as an association of a braising technique. And it's something that I ate quite a bit that mom would make or grandma would make, and now here we are as chefs, and we changed the name so we sound more educated, more edumacated, because we say pot roast or we say braising, right? Now, let's a couple of things, everybody. I want to reiterate the fact that we have made the decision to go back and open up the prior weeks in this class. So all weeks starting tomorrow, 1 through 7, are going to be opened up, so you can submit your assignments, and you can submit your missed knowledge check discussion forum, and any research materials that you might have missed. So you can certainly get that in. We really want to see everyone get through this class, and we are committed to making that happen. Really focus on your time management. That is not just a skill that we utilize here in school, but that is a skill that you will utilize as a chef in industry. It is huge. So make sure you take advantage of that. Also, really begin, for those of you that struggle in the areas of reliability. That's a big, big issue in the restaurant industry. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk. In the food service industry, we don't like people that say they're going to, might, or will, and then don't. It does not work that way. So you have committed to this, and we are here to make it happen. Rededicate yourself. Sit down for a few minutes by yourself and really, think about what's going on. Think about why you're doing this, and remember that fire. Remember that passion to help you continue to move forward. And then last but certainly not least, get your priorities in order. You have to remember that what you're doing here today is going to have a direct reflection on what happens to you tomorrow. The more effort you put in today, the better tomorrow is going to be for you, and we are here to help you get there. So take advantage of the opportunity. You can do this. You guys have this. It can be done. Anything to add to that little soapbox there, Chef Suzanne?
Actually, I will add a little bit to your soapbox. I think sometimes switching up who you're cooking for can kind of help refresh and rejuvenate, get you feeling a little inspired. So if you're cooking the same food and you're feeding it to the same people, or you're feeding the same people every night, nothing special. Invite a friend or a family member or a neighbor that you don't normally feed when you're doing this braised dish, or if you're working on a week that you may have missed, or if you're working ahead. Do something different, because when you hear some fresh, praise and hear how good things are and how good they look, it gets you reinvigorated. It gives you that inspiration that sometimes you feel like you might be missing.
Yes, absolutely. So I agree with that. Definitely get yourself some additional exposure. Get yourself some new people at your dinner table. That will help reinvigorate you and give you a little bit some new energy. Something else that somebody mentioned to me many, many years ago, I was cooking an omelet. That omelet had a little bit of brown on it. It probably wasn't the best omelet. And they looked at me and they said, "Would you serve that to Auguste Escoffier? Would you serve that dish?" And that really struck me, right? I wasn't putting as much effort into making my food as good as I possibly could. I was just trying to get by, trying to do the minimum. And after that, I really thought about it. Every time I put out a plate today, I was thinking to myself, hey, would I serve that to a dignitary? Would I serve that to somebody of power or of influence? Would I serve that to Auguste Escoffier? So these are things you really need to take into consideration. Each and everybody out there is so capable of achieving and succeeding. It's about the effort that you put into it, right? Nobody walks into this career without effort, just like anything else in this life, right? You can sit around and think about it all day long, but until you get up and you do something about it, it's going to stay the same. So let's move on to week 8 here in CA 121, Culinary Techniques. Let's take a look at our class page. Sorry, I wasn't set up properly for that. Okay, week 8. Hopefully everybody got a chance to take a look at this little video. Not only is it on the class page, but I do send it out to everybody each Monday through the Moodle messaging system. So certainly take a moment to watch it. It's got a lot of good advice in there. Research materials. Make sure you take the time to do the research materials and answer the questions when they are in there. Answering the questions helps you post attendance, and you also get credit for doing it. So make sure you open up the research materials. Week 8 live session. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the effort. If you can't get to the live session, make sure that you are watching the live session archive. It's extremely critical. The point of the live session is it helps you to understand the weekly assignment, and it gives you a lot of hints and techniques to become a professional chef. So take advantage of it. Week 8 conversions knowledge check. There is a new conversions chart that will be in this week's presentation and posted to the class page as well. Knowledge check based on the research materials. They go hand in hand. Don't forget that you can take that knowledge check as many times as you like and only the highest score sticks. And then our assignment this week is braised protein with starch and sauce. That will be on the plate this week, and we're getting real excited about that. That's a really cool technique. Let's get moving into the meat and potatoes. Is that pretty good? Is that a pretty good segue? Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Let's get moving into the meat and potatoes for tonight here in CA 121. We're going to talk about a couple of hints for the class, and then we're going to dive right in to the main dish. So each and every one of you got a copy of the weekly checklist this week. This is a recommended flow for your week. If you follow this flow, your weeks will be extremely simplistic. Do your research materials on Wednesday. Boom. Takes you 10 minutes. Attend the live session Wednesday. Takes you an hour, right? Complete your knowledge check Thursday. Takes 15 minutes. Read and understand this week's assignment. Create a purchase list, ingredients. Do that on Friday. Boom, you're done. You're set. You know what's going on. You can think about it. You can organize yourself. Prepare your assignment. Check rubrics. Submit Saturday and Sunday. Life is good. In the restaurant industry, procrastination is the kiss of death. We do not wait. If we can get it done 3 weeks in advance, we get it done 3 weeks in advance. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne? You're laughing because it's reality.
I am, because it is reality. That's too funny. Yes, especially when you're doing big events. You've got to plan in advance. You got to make the freezer space. You just, yes.
Right. Hang on one second. I got to turn out one more light. Hang on.
Well, I can tell Crystal and Deidre while you're gone that I have my screen split between two places. So I was looking at what you had on the screen a minute ago, and I was reading along. And then I looked to the side, and it looked like there was some guy I'd never seen before that was in a chef hat. I was like, who is that happy guy? And I thought he was one of, like, we had a new student join us just now. So I was trying to figure out who that happy guy was. And I was like, I don't see a name. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, he just popped up. Yeah. But at any rate, Chef Suzanne, I know, is a big fan of doing this. In the commercial kitchens, we make ourselves lists each and every day. You know, what do we have to accomplish? What do we have to do? When it's down on paper, it gives you a different perspective. It helps you organize yourself mentally. I don't know if any of you have had that problem when you get into the kitchen and you're like blah, 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 trying to figure things out because it's all jumbled in your head. But if you can take a moment, get it down on paper, get yourself organized, you'll be in really good shape. So that's a recommendation for everybody to follow this list on a weekly basis. Obviously, it'll change depending on what assignments we have. But this is a good one to start with this week. With this, you're probably going to have to spend about 2 hours this week getting your work done. And if you just take those 2 hours and spread it out over the 5 days, it's a pretty minimal investment to a successful future, I would say. Yeah, not asking a lot. Classroom participation policy. We went through this in detail last week. We're not gonna focus on this, but thank you, Crystal, for wearing your chef coat to the class this evening. We really appreciate that. This is something that you need to get yourselves in the habit. If you take a look at Chef Suzanne and I and your other instructors here at Escoffier, we present ourselves in a very professional fashion. And it's not because we're trying to make ourselves look gorgeous. This is the way we operate in industry, and you need to get yourselves in the habit of doing such now. So thank you for adhering to that. Your knowledge check this week, it's right along the same lines as the one last week. Last week we did have a conversions knowledge check in the weekly presentation, and this is a different one as well. That goes through your tablespoons, teaspoons, cups, ounces, etc., etc. So when you do your knowledge check, this will be on your class page. Simply click on the week 1 presentation link and you're good to go. Do we have any questions so far? Anyone?
No.
Oh. Thanks, Crystal. Okay. So now we are going to move into braising. This is a technique that I personally love because as a chef, we're always trying to look how to generate profit, right? How can we make a little bit more money? And a lot of times those tough cuts of meat, right? The chucks, the tops, the briskets, you know, the lamb shanks, some of these other things that we can't grill or saute, we have to come up with creative methods to make them tender, palatable, and very savory in their flavor profile. So we like to turn to braising quite a bit in the kitchen environment. It's something I'm sure most of you have had at one point in time or another. So braising, braising is a combination cooking method that uses both wet or moist and dry heats. And typically what we do is we'll take our meat, and we'll talk about what kind to use here in just a few minutes, but we'll take our primal cut of meat or our portion cut of meat, and we'll sear it at a high temperature. And that searing forces the outside to caramelize and creates a much more complex depth flavor profile. And then we're going to put it into a pot, and traditionally we'll set it down on top of mirepoix, or whatever you choose. I've seen people just do straight leeks before, something to provide a little buffer from the bottom of the pan to the actual braising item. And what the braising process does, tough cuts of meat are traditionally pieces of the animal that are exercised the most. The hindquarters, the front quarters, the leg, the constant movement, the constant exercise that animal receives, the collagen develops and becomes like a twisted twine in there, right? If you could think of a bunch of pieces of string all mashed together, and that's the collagen, and that's what makes that meat so tough. The process of braising, once that meat reaches to about 150 degrees, it begins to unloosen and untangle all those strands of collagen, making the meat much more tender. So it takes two things to break down that collagen. One is the temperature, and the second one is the time, right? So it has to get to at least 150 degrees, and then it has to go for a certain amount of time. We can't tell you the time because we don't know the size of the cut of the meat, and we don't know what type of meat it is. And you're going to have to learn some of these things through checking various recipes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's basically what's happening with the braising process. So it's breaking down the collagen, untwining it, so to speak. Braising became popular many, many years ago. I think it was it was after the development of the Iron Age, sometime in the 17 or 1800s. And what they did is they first developed a heavy-duty cast iron pot. And then they created a flat lid. That flat lid became a very essential part to the braising technique, because what they figured out is they could put coals on the bottom. And low burning coals literally translate to braise in English. It's a French term, but the low burning coals actually mean braise in French. Well, they put the low burning coals on the bottom, then they put the pot on top of that, then they would put their aromatic vegetables in there, and then they would put their meat in there, and then they would add some type of broth. If this is still popular today, you can use wine, water, chicken stock, beef broth, whatever you choose. They would only cover just the vegetables initially. And then they would put the tight-fitting iron flat lid on top of that pot. And then they would put more coals on top of that. And what that did is that created what's called the Maillard effect. The Maillard effect is when you get that heat coming from the top and that heat coming from the bottom, and it creates that circulation of heat on the inside of the pot and forces it to brown and caramelize, right? That's the Maillard effect. So literally, you have the steam going on in the pot, you have the heat coming from the top and the bottom. So that's why we say it's a dry heat and a moist heat cooking method simultaneously. So once again, they usually do mirepoix on the bottom. That's your call, what you want to do. You know, I've been down in Mexico, and I've seen them just use dried chilies on the bottom of the pot, which kind of creates a layer, but those dried guajillo chilies or the chili molato or whatever would add a tremendous amount of flavor in that broth. I told you when they first started doing this many years ago that they were adding a small amount of liquid just to cover the mirepoix. But as time has progressed over the years, that amount of water has come up, or liquid has come up. So you really never want to braise more than halfway up that item. Otherwise, you're going to force that meat to potentially become dry, because believe it or not, when you boil something, you can actually dry it out, because that heat forces the meat to steam, and then all the steam forces all the moisture out of the meat, so you could end up drying out your product. So you only want to go about halfway up in that. And once again, we talked about this last week. This is a Rondo up here. This is this is a La Cruette, very expensive roasting pan that I happen to like, but I can't afford. So I'll tell you this real quick. My wife, at the last facility that she was working at, they were closing it down because they were getting ready to remodel, and this was with Compass Food Group, and so they were just throwing stuff away left and right. They had all these La Cruette pots and braising pots and everything else that they used for buffetware, and my wife pulled them out of the dumpster. And so, yes, we do have pots and pans from the dumpster. And they're about $200 to $300 each, so nice stuff. And then braising versus stewing. You always get a lot of questions about that. What's the difference? Is braising stewing, or stewing braising? And there's a couple of ways that I like to tell the difference, right? Number one, in stewing, the meat is traditionally submerged in the broth completely. It is more of a soup-style broth than a braising liquid. Big thing. Number two, traditionally, we will stew smaller cuts of meat with the vegetables mixed in together. And then number three, traditionally, stew will be the main component of the dish, right? So as soon as it's done cooking, we'll take it out, we'll put it in the bowl and serve it. Whereas braising is a little bit different. We generally sear the protein. We put it on top of our aromatics, our mirepoix, and then we'll only add enough liquid, no more than halfway up the side of the protein. Otherwise, it's too much. And then we use both cooking methods, the dry and the moist. We like to keep a lid over the top. In industry, once you guys are in the real kitchen, you're going to actually cover it with plastic wrap first, and then aluminum foil over the outside of that. That aluminum foil helps keep that moisture in there. You remember just a moment ago, we said that once that it gets hot in there and that starts creating steam, you want to make sure that steam stays inside your pot and doesn't escape and reduce. That's part of that Maillard effect that they're talking about, that caramelization. It's very, very, very important. If you take a look at these pictures that are here, this is a classic stew looking dish right here. And then these are some beautiful shanks that have been seared and braised right down here at the bottom. What are the best proteins to braise? Speaking of this week, and it's kind of cool because most of these proteins are fairly inexpensive to work with. Pork belly, I love braised pork belly. You can have a lot of fun with that, especially if you do it with like a gastrique type sauce, which is a little bit of sugar and a little bit of wine mixed together with some cracked black peppercorns and maybe some herbs in there, and just let that pork belly braise for a period of time after you've seared it. It is so delicious. And then we have pork shoulder, which is quite common. Pork butt that we love to shred. Right? That's Texarkana food right there, isn't it? Yeah.
As a matter of fact, yes, it is. In my house, though, not gonna lie, braised pork belly is where it's at. My husband will that's probably one of his favorite foods in the whole wide world.
So spill the beans. How does he do it?
It's kind of like you're just talking. It's really Asian inspired. So it's got the brown sugar and the soy sauce in a glaze after the fact, and it's so good. It's so
It's
good.
delicious.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love to take that pork belly after it comes out, once it cools down, cut it into lardons, and then saute those lardons. Lardons are about quarter inch by quarter inch by quarter inch. They almost look like your pinky. They're about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in length. And then they can be sauteed until crispy and then put into salads or into pasta dishes. And it's real fun. A good way to use a different braised item in your foods. Eye of the round, top round, brisket are all fantastic. Chuck steak is a great one to braise. Short ribs are really popular these days. And the place that I happen to highlight at on the weekends, we do quite a bit of braised short ribs, which is absolutely delicious. Lamb shank, you'll see quite a bit of that. Spare ribs, venison too. If anybody has access to any game, game can be a lot of fun to braise because game traditionally is a well-exercised animal, so that does have a lot of collagen, and it does have a tendency to be very low in fat. So the braising technique works very well for that type of animal. And then moving on, oxtail, and then of course, least but not last, Chef Suzanne's favorite. What's your favorite? What's your favorite cut of chicken to braise?
Oh, thighs. I love chicken thighs.
Oh,
I mean, actually, I'm all about some, just grilled chicken breast. But when it comes to braising, I want a chicken thigh.
and what is your favorite braised chicken dish?
I do like coq au vin, but probably like the chicken with 40 cloves of garlic.
Oh, that sounds super delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, coq au vin. I hope that somebody this week does coq au vin. I'm a big fan. I just kind of like the name of it, number one. And then number two, it's such a classic dish with that Burgundy wine in there that's reduced, and the technique that's used to make coq au vin is such a classic braising technique. If anybody has a chance to make that, I would recommend it because it involves everything that we just talked about, and it makes a delicious dish, especially if you are using the chicken thighs. Very, very important. And then how to braise. How, what, when, where, and how. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sear the meat on all sides. You're going to season it heavily. You have to remember, especially if it's a larger cut of meat, that sodium doesn't penetrate into the center, and you want to make sure you give a good flavor. So we're going to season that, and we're going to sear it on all sides. And once it has that nice caramelized look to it, we're going to saute that mirepoix just a little bit as well. The mirepoix can be what we call rough cut for this exercise. Rough cut means it's not a small dice, medium dice, or a large dice. It's just you're going to run your knife through it. And it doesn't have to be exact. Just 1-inch pieces, 1.5 inches is perfectly fine. You're creating that layer at the bottom of the pan. That layer protects the meat from touching the heat source. And then number two, helps flavor that sauce. So you've got your mirepoix. Make sure that you're using a very heavy bottom pan this week. Try not to use a real thin-sided pan. What happens is that the heat will transfer too quickly, and you will end up burning your meat or drying your meat out. So be very cautious. And also the pan or pot that you choose to do this in, make sure it has a tight-fitting lid. Very, very important. If you do not have a tight-fitting lid, you can take plastic wrap, put that on there, and then you can cover it with aluminum foil, and that will create virtually the same effect. I prefer the plastic wrap method because it does ensure that everything stays in there. No, the plastic wrap will not melt. So it actually does stay together.
I remember the first time I ever saw that, I just thought it was like magic. It's like, what? You can put plastic wrap under a lid and under foil and it's not going to melt, and
Yeah.
you put it in the oven, and I just remember thinking, what is this magic? This is not going to work. That's a horrible idea. but it makes such a big difference.
It does. It's that extra layer of protection to help ensure that that moisture stays inside the pot. So very, very critical. Now you've sauteed your mirepoix. Anything left in that pan after sauteing, that's our fond. In our fond, we want to make sure that we deglaze. We get that pan hot, and we're going to add a portion, preferably of a nice wine, a drier wine. You don't want to use a wine like a Riesling or a Moscato. Those are pretty sweet, and it's going to end up flavoring your dish. So you want to stick with something a little bit more on the dry side, such as a Cab, a Burgundy, Nebbiolo, or Chardonnay if you're doing white. And then you're going to get all the stuff up off the bottom of the pot. All that little stuff that's stuck. That's such good flavor. We love that. And then you're going to put that mirepoix down in the bottom of your pot, and then you're going to put your protein on top of that. Make sure your mirepoix gets that nice caramel color on it. By doing that, you're adding to the complexity of the flavor. Now you're going to add your braising liquid at this point. Once again, your braising liquid can be virtually anything that you can think of. I've seen people braise in beer before, beer braised. I don't know if that was a cell technique, but it doesn't sound good, but it worked.
Hopefully there was something in besides just straight beer. I've seen the beer braise too, but there's normally some stock in it too to kind of mellow it out.
Mellow it out, yeah. Like Chef Suzanne, that's a great point that you just brought up. Don't be afraid to create a mixture of your own braising liquid. It can be a 50-50 thing. It can be half stock, half wine. And some people do just plain water as well. So you also want to make sure that with your aromatics, you also add your choice of herbs, right? Traditionally, the flavors with bay leaf, thyme, cracked black pepper, garlic, those are the traditional things, but don't be afraid to venture outside the box a little bit. Chef Suzanne, at the beginning of tonight's live session, was talking about introducing some new things into your food. Hey, now's a great time. Yeah. Don't be afraid to take a little turn and go a little left. Instead of using ground black pepper, maybe crack whole peppercorns. Maybe you want to, if you're doing a poultry dish, maybe you want to put a little turmeric in there and bring a little color to the dish. Or what else would you suggest there, Chef Suzanne?
Another really popular braised dish is country braised chicken, I think they call it, and it's got curry in it, and I think it's got apples, and it's so good. It's so very good. So that's always a good option to really kind of expand and try some new stuff, try some new flavors. This is where it really starts to get fun. Yeah.
It's an absolute blast. For example, my wife does a lot of carnitas. It's kind of where she's from down in Mexico, and when she braises, she actually braises the pork in fat, and which is just heavenly. But in the braising liquid, it's got cloves and oranges.
I do mine with cinnamon sticks and oranges.
Cinnamon sticks, yeah.
That's awesome. It sounds very much like the way I do mine. Yeah. That's awesome.
So
flavor is ridiculously good. It's so good.
So, and then a few moments ago, Chef Suzanne was saying her husband likes to do the pork belly, and it's Asian influence. So don't be afraid to steer away from the hoisin or the plum or the fish sauce. Fish sauce does really well in that dish with the sodium in there, and it adds a really nice flavor. So now's a little bit of time to get out and be a little bit different. Introduce something new. Energize yourself, right? So moving on to deglazing the pot. So we've scraped everything up off the bottom of the pot, all that fond and everything else. And now we've got our mirepoix on the bottom, or our aromatics on the bottom of the pot, protein on the top. We've got our lid on there. And we're only going to add liquid, so it comes up about a third to a halfway up the protein. Do not submerge. There are no lifeguards in that pot. If that meat drowns, it's done, right? So you only halfway up the pot, about 1/3. And then when you're braising, you got to remember, it's a pretty common technique that you're going to put this pot back on the stove. And if you bring that pot to a boil, a raging boil, you're only going to succeed in drying the meat out. Because what happens is that meat gets very, very hot. The moisture on the inside of the meat heats up, turns into steam, and then forces itself out of the protein, leaving you with a log-like substance that's very difficult to eat. So heat is a big factor when it comes to braising. We want to make sure there's a one standard rule of thumb that we always go by, and that's called low and slow. So take it easy with the temperature. 225, 230 is perfect. A lot of people like to braise on the stove. However, in industry, 99.9% of the time, it is done in the oven. So we recommend loading up your pot, liquid, plastic wrap over the top, lid over the top, or foil over the plastic wrap, and then into your oven at 225 degrees. Plan on this taking at least a couple of hours to cook, and voila, it's going to be beautiful by the time you get done. So make sure boiling. This slide here says a 325 degree oven, and I disagree with that. I would highly recommend going around, I like 225, 250 a little bit better for braising. There's one thing that everyone needs to learn about cooking. That took me a while. I can always heat the oven up and cook it a little bit longer, but I can't cool it down and cook it shorter. Does that make sense? And when it comes to seasoning foods, you can always add a little bit more salt, but you can't take the salt out. So be very conscientious about that when it comes to braising. Moving on. So the sauce is really something special here, because you've just had that sauce, that liquid, that wine, broth, stock, water, whatever you chose, has just spent the past couple of hours in this pot, all happy with the mirepoix and the meat. It has intense flavor. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove our protein from the pot, put it onto a rack, and allow it to cool. While it's cooling, we're going to begin reducing that sauce. I like to leave the mirepoix and everything else in there to allow it to reduce. Some people like to strain it at that point. That's your choice. But you can reduce that sauce. As that sauce reduces, the liquid evaporates and the flavors intensify. So you're going to end up with this very rich, sultry, savory sauce that will automatically go onto your protein. We'll take a look at it over here. So this is, we mentioned using water, and that's perfectly fine if that's all you have access to. But a lot of us in industry, I mentioned beer a few minutes ago, but a lot of us really like to get into making that broth something special. I've done a chicken dish before where we seared it, and then we did garlic, chicken stock, apricot, and soy sauce and ginger into the broth, and that's what we braised it in. Right? So it had this kind of Asian, sweet, salty type flavor to it that became a great addition to a salad dish later on. So think, get out, try something different. Here's some great presentations down here. We talk about the height, color, and texture of all of our dishes, and we really want to see a lot of that this week. Braised foods present very, very well because it's such a natural presentation. You're going to go right over the top of your starch. Your starch could be risotto, which we've all learned how to make. We could do some type of pasta, mashed potatoes, or rice. Something that's going to hold that protein up. I prefer mashed potatoes because it makes a nice stand. And then that sauce that's natural from your pot right over the top, and it gives it that nice glaze. You really don't need to do too much garnish because you really don't want to hide the food. This week's assignment. Do you have anything else to add? I've been on a roll here for the last few minutes.
You're on a roll because I'm so hungry now I can't even hardly put it into words. And so while you're talking, I'm literally in my head thinking that I'm going to braise a dish this week and I'm going to take pictures just like a student and I'm going to share them this week. And I'm in my mind thinking, what do I want to make? So I have so many ideas. And I was thinking, I should do coq au vin. And I'm like, no, thinking some beef, maybe some short ribs. And I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm going to student it up this week and I'm going to braise a dish and take some pictures and share.
Tell me the truth. Is that second monitor at grubhub.com right now?
It's not, but I'm not going to lie. My second monitor has a picture of some beef short ribs. I'm not even lying. Really and truly does.
This is the life of a chef. These are the challenges that we face on a daily basis.
Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be torture just talking about this stuff over and over again. Does anybody have any questions? Crystal, Deidre, any thoughts or concerns?
No, not really.
No? Crystal, what are you thinking about braising?
I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Uh-huh.
I guess it's the name of it that's kind of getting me. It's not so much the way it cooks, it's just I know it by a different name or
Uh-huh.
different way to say it.
Mm.
But I think I got it.
Yeah, you think you understand it?
Yeah, a little bit. A little
Okay.
bit more than what I started with.
Just remember, what you're trying to end up with is what Chef Suzanne has put up on the screen. And I'm sure when that person opened up the lid from that pot, I'm sure they were hit with these aromatics, that rich, savory feeling that just makes your tummy go, gets it going. But that meat, Crystal, you've had carnitas before, right?
Yes, they're my husband's favorite.
Yeah, and they're very tender and they kind of fall apart. You're looking for that same end product here. For example, this dish that's up on the screen has large cuts of meat in it, and I guarantee you when they pull it out, that meat will just fall to pieces.
I liked this image because I like that you could see how much the sauce has reduced or how much the braising liquid has reduced. You can see that kind of that ring around it.
Mhm.
So that's why I wanted to share that. Plus, I really and truly did have that on my screen. It may be my screensaver.
I get the technique. It's just, like I said, it's just the name braising. I've never heard of it. I didn't know that's the name of the style of cooking, the way of cooking.
That's the method of cooking that involves moist and dry heat method. And then do you remember the name of the browning that happens?
The G something.
No, Maillard, right?
Oh, okay. No.
The Maillard effect. When that radiant heat begins circulating in that pot, not only as a force of steam, but as a force of the heat from the top and the bottom, and it starts circulating in there, and that forces everything to kind of caramelize and come together and create that nice savory flavor. And then you get these little bits like at the very top where the sauce is dehydrated up against the meat, and it's you bite it and it's just a burst of happiness on your palate. I'm getting too excited here. I gotta stop. But any other questions?
No. It's just getting familiar with the terms.
All right. Now make sure if you're not familiar, just pick up the phone and call. Chef Suzanne and I will walk you through a little bit more. You'll probably find us at a local steakhouse, after this. But
Seriously, if I could think of somewhere that served braised food other than maybe Cracker Barrel, I would definitely be going out after this. And everything sounds good. Like I said, my wheels are turning. So hopefully everybody else watching this, their wheels are turning, trying to figure out what to make this week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's just growing up, braising to me was just in other words, it was caldo to me, in Spanish. So I've never heard that word before. It's just getting used to it, getting familiar with it.
And I think I think caldo is probably a little bit closer to the stewing technique
Yes.
than the actual braising technique. So a little bit different. So, but it's really cool. I do want to mention something to everyone out there. When it comes to braising or creating any other dish, you are literally like a musician. There's very little difference between a chef and a musician. A musician takes different sounds and brings them together to create a song. And especially in this braising technique, you are taking different flavors. Flavor the carrot, this onion, the celery, the braising liquid, the herbs, the protein. You're bringing all those flavors together to create a dish. It's the same creative process that musicians use. So as you're compiling these flavors, and I'm sure Deidre and I'm sure Crystal and everyone else out there has a particular flavor profile that they really enjoy. And if you can mentally or visually understand these flavors on your palate as you're compiling them and what they're going to end up like, then you're on your way to chefdom, right? Because that's what we do. And now that you've learned this technique, how to make that meat nice and tender, now you can take all those flavors and learn how to make it your flavor with that nice and tender meat. That's what a chef does, right? A cook just follows the recipe. The chef creates it. So let's take a look at this week's assignment. Up on the board over here. So you are demonstrating braising protein, cooking vegetables, and a flavored liquid, making pan sauce. That pan sauce that they are referring to is the reduction that we just spoke about a few minutes ago. This is a fantastic exercise to really focus on your narrative. Your narrative really can be rich and enhanced with this exercise, and I'm sure Chef Suzanne will follow up with that in just a moment. The required photos this week are the usual photos: self-identification photo, mise en place demonstrating proper station setup, sanitizing bucket, and test strip concentration. Very, very important. And then braising your protein, properly portioned protein for braising. It is very, very common that we will braise what we call primal cuts, which can be an entire short rib. It can be an entire top round. It can be an entire brisket. We will braise it whole. Pull it out, allow it to cool, make our sauce. When it's cool, we will portion it out. That is perfectly fine to do for this exercise because that's what we do in industry as well. So when they are asking for the properly portioned protein for braising, we just want to see that nice piece of protein for braising. Mirepoix cut appropriately. We said we could do a rough cut for that. That's no problem. You're going to sear your protein, properly saute mirepoix, and your pince, if you're using, and I don't even want to get into that because that just gives me a headache. Then your product after deglazing. So that's when you're going to remove all the fond from the bottom of the pot, and then all components. And then Chef Suzanne's going to want to make sure you have your mirepoix on the bottom, and then you have your protein on the top, and that braising liquid's only going about 1/3 halfway up. And then your finished product, Chef Suzanne just showed a nice picture up on the screen of what it should look like when it comes out of the oven. Your finished sauce and your plated dish. We talked about, hey, mashed potatoes are fantastic for this one because they help your product stand up on the plate and they'll really give it very nice appearance. And your narrative and your production sheet, critical. Chef Suzanne, what did I miss?
I don't think you've missed anything. When it comes to this assignment, and I think that Chef has really hit it home, how important the fact that it's two different cooking methods. It's a combination cooking method. So making sure that you are searing that protein first, then you're gonna take it out, and then you're gonna add in your mirepoix. You're gonna get color on that. So you're looking to get that PVD on your meat and your mirepoix. Because I think that some people just kind of skip that step. But if you're not doing the initial sear or saute, then you're not really braising, because it's the two, basically it's the first part is getting that color on your product, and then you're going to add your liquid, and then you're going to simmer it until that meat is just fork tender, fall off the bone, delicious. And then you're going to take that meat out, those big pieces of meat or that big piece of meat. You're going to adjust that sauce and strain it, and then you're going to have this amazing meat that you're going to put on your mashed potatoes or pasta or rice or grits or whatever makes you happy. And then you're going to put that beautiful, rich sauce over the top of it. So it's a little different than most of us, again, have probably ever done. But it looks a lot more intense and involved than it is. Most of what you're doing is going to be sitting and watching until your meat finishes cooking. So this is going to be one to really show off to the friends and family. I guarantee it. People will be like, this is amazing, better than anything I ever had in a restaurant. The meal that'll do that is this one.
Yes. You will be a rock star, famous, cover a Bon Appetit after this one. We don't allow grits in Arizona, though. It just ain't going to happen.
I'm in Texas. I think it comes with everything.
Once it crosses that state line, it's over. Yeah. Crystal, you like grits?
Never had them.
That's okay.
I'm like way South Texas, down in like close to Mexico, so I'm not familiar with none of those foods.
Yeah, don't hurry up. Don't hurry up. You're okay. Yeah. Now, actually, some people really like grits, and I've had I had a fantastic shrimp and grits back in Charlotte, South Carolina, not too long ago, and that just rocked my world. So it's a good cooking. It's a good item to eat. I enjoy it. So, but we do joke about regional foods, and after you've been in industry for a while, you'll talk to a friend from the South, and you'll be out in the West, and you give them a hard time. It's this camaraderie is what it is. So anyone have any other questions? Ladies and gentlemen, it was an absolutely fantastic live session. Thank you very much. Let's review a couple of things. Number one, we're going to open up all the assignments, discussion forums, and knowledge checks for you to go ahead and get all of your work in right away. Those of you who complete 100% of all projects, that includes discussion forums, research materials, and knowledge checks and assignments, will receive an extra 10% boost to their grade. You can do it. Yes. And this presentation that we just went through will be on your class page here in just a few moments for you to have easy access to. Before you call Chef Suzanne or myself, make sure you have viewed the live session and taken a look at the weekly presentation materials, because 99.9% of your answers are going to be in there. If you can't find it, we are here for you, and we will be the first ones to pick up the phone and respond to your message to take care of you. I hope everybody has an absolutely fantastic week, and we look forward to a lot of assignments coming in this week. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.